A stranger pays it forward. In a small-town grocery store, a single mother named Sarah pushed her cart down the aisle with her 2 little kids. She had carefully picked only the essentials: bread, milk, rice, and a few vegetables. At the checkout counter, her heart sank as the total flashed on the screen. She nervously counted her cash and realized she was short. Embarrassed, she whispered to the cashier to remove some items. Standing right behind her was a middle-aged man in a suit. He quietly observed the situation. Without saying much, he leaned forward and handed his card to the cashier. "I'll cover it," he said with a gentle smile. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, and she shook her head. "No, I can't let you do this." But the man simply replied, "One day, just do the same for someone else." The groceries were bagged, and Sarah left the store in shock. That night, she told her children about the kindness of a stranger and promised them that whenever they had the chance, they would pass it on. Weeks later, Sarah noticed her elderly neighbor struggling to carry groceries up the stairs. She immediately helped, buying him fresh fruit from her own pocket. That simple act began a ripple of kindness throughout her neighborhood. What started as one stranger's small gesture in a grocery store spread through countless lives. It wasn't about the money. It was about hope, humanity, and the reminder that kindness, no matter how small, truly changes lives. The homeless veteran's second chance. On a cold winter morning in New York City, people hurried past a man sitting on the sidewalk, wrapped in a worn-out army jacket. His name was James, a veteran who had served his country with pride but had fallen on hard times after returning home. Most pedestrians looked away, but one young man named Daniel stopped. He knelt down, offered James a hot coffee, and asked, "What's your story?" James's eyes watered. No one had asked in years. He spoke about his struggles, losing his job, battling PTSD, and ending up homeless. Daniel listened with compassion and decided he couldn't just walk away. He gave James some warm clothes and promised to check back the next day. True to his word, Daniel returned, bringing friends who offered James a haircut, new shoes, and food. They helped him find a shelter that provided not just a bed, but counseling and job assistance. Slowly, James began to rebuild his life. Months later, with the community's support, James secured a steady job at a local warehouse. The once forgotten man on the street now stood tall again, filled with dignity and hope. When asked about his journey, James said, "It wasn't just the shelter or the job. It was the fact that someone saw me as a human being again." That single act of kindness, taking time to listen, became the turning point in James's life. Daniel's compassion reminded everyone that true kindness doesn't always cost money. Sometimes, it's simply acknowledging someone's existence and offering a hand when the world has turned its back. The lost wallet miracle. On a sunny afternoon in California, a teenager named Michael was riding his bike through a local park when he noticed something lying in the grass. He stopped, picked it up, and realized it was a leather wallet. Opening it, he found several $100s in cash, credit cards, and a driver's license. For a moment, temptation whispered in his mind. He could keep the money and no one would ever know. But deep down, Michael knew the right thing to do. He looked at the ID card and saw the name, Robert Williams. The man lived only a few blocks away. Michael rode straight to the address, knocked on the door, and an elderly man with shaky hands opened. When Michael explained, the man's eyes widened in disbelief. He grabbed the wallet, flipped it open, and began to cry. "This money was for my heart medicine," Robert whispered. "I thought I had lost it forever." Overwhelmed with gratitude, Robert tried to reward Michael with some cash, but the teenager refused. "I just wanted to do the right thing," he said with a shy smile. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood about Michael's honesty. Local news outlets picked up the story, and soon, strangers from across the city were praising him online. Inspired by his integrity, many people in the community started sharing their own small acts of kindness, returning lost items, helping the elderly, and donating to those in need. What began as a simple choice by one teenager became a spark of goodness that lit up an entire town. Michael proved that honesty and kindness still exist, and that sometimes, the greatest miracles come from doing the right thing when no one is watching. Neighbors rebuild a home. In a quiet Texas neighborhood, the Johnson family lived in a modest home filled with love and laughter. One summer evening, tragedy struck. A sudden electrical fire engulfed the house, leaving nothing but ashes. The family of 4 escaped with their lives, but they lost everything else: clothes, furniture, and the memories they had built over the years. As the fire trucks left and the smoke settled, the Johnsons stood helpless, staring at the ruins. But what they didn't know was that their neighbors had been watching, and they weren't about to let the family face this pain alone. The very next morning, a group of neighbors gathered in front of the burned house. Someone brought clothes, another carried boxes of food, while others set up temporary shelter. A local contractor offered to rebuild the house for free, and volunteers signed up to help with painting, carpentry, and cleaning. Children collected coins in jars, families donated furniture, and a nearby church organized a fundraiser. Within weeks, the Johnsons saw their new home rising from the ashes, brick by brick, wall by wall, built not by professionals alone, but by love and compassion from their community. On the day the family moved back in, the neighbors surprised them with a welcome home celebration. Balloons filled the air, tables overflowed with food, and tears flowed freely. Mr. Johnson, overwhelmed, whispered, "We lost everything in one night, but gained a family in all of you." The fire had destroyed a house, but kindness rebuilt a home. The Johnsons' story became a shining reminder that in times of tragedy, communities have the power to come together and create something stronger than what was lost: hope, unity, and a new beginning. A ride that changed everything. On a rainy evening in Chicago, taxi driver Ahmed noticed a young woman rushing into his cab, tears streaming down her face. She gave him the address of a hospital and sat silently, clutching her phone. Concerned, Ahmed gently asked if she was okay. Hesitant at first, she finally spoke. Her little boy was about to undergo emergency surgery, and she didn't know how she would pay the medical bills. As they drove through the city streets, Ahmed listened carefully. When they arrived at the hospital, she reached for her purse, but Ahmed quietly shook his head. "This ride is on me," he said softly. The woman stared at him in disbelief. "But I don't even have enough to tip you," she whispered. Ahmed smiled. "Your child's life is more important than money." That night, Ahmed couldn't forget her pain. He shared her story online, hoping someone might help. To his surprise, the post went viral. Within days, strangers across the country donated generously. The fundraiser raised more than enough to cover the boy's surgery and medical expenses. Weeks later, the woman invited Ahmed to meet her son, who was recovering. With a bright smile, she hugged him tightly, whispering, "You didn't just give me a free ride. You gave my son a future." Ahmed's single act of kindness had turned into a movement, uniting thousands of strangers who proved that compassion can ripple far beyond one moment. In the end, it wasn't just about a taxi fare. It was about humanity, empathy, and the power of standing by someone in their darkest hour. One ride had truly changed everything, for a child, for a mother, and for an entire community inspired to do good.